I've been looking at the worst jobs in industrial history, but which job's the very worst? Bone cleaning was certainly revolting work, but it was reasonably safe compared to the leggers who risked torn ligaments and drowning to keep the canals working. And building the great bridges of the Industrial Revolution required nerves of steel. Where on earth could there be anything worse than that? Well, nowhere, but underneath the earth is a different matter. In every historical period, there have been worse jobs underground, down the mines. Without coal, there would have been no steam and no industry. By 1800, Britain was getting through about 15 million tonnes a year. Getting it out of the ground was a dark and dangerous business. Any job down a mine would have been pretty horrible, but if you were a child, it must have been doubly bad, which is why I'm nominating the child miners known as Hurriers as having the very worst industrial job. Kerry, I thought miners were all big lads like you. What were children doing down there?
Well, in the past, of course, the tunnels weren't as large as they are in modern mines, and it was easier for children to negotiate them, and also cheaper to employ children than fully grown adults.
So what did these Hurriers do?
Well, the Hurriers, or drummers as we call them in South Wales, they actually brought the coal from the coal face, which had been cut by the colliers, back to the main roads.
How old were these kids?
Officially they started about 8 years old, but there have been cases of 5- and 3-year-olds working underground.
And that's what I've got to do?
And that's what you've got to do.
Well, I can do what a 5-year-old can do.
Of course you can.
You'll get an idea of how bad being a Hurrier was when I tell you their eventual replacements were pit ponies. I can't shed the years to get an idea of the terror of a 6-year-old going down into the dark for the first time, but I can at least shed the hard hat for once. Instead, I get some breeches and a white shirt, and I've got a feeling it's not going to stay that way for long. Hurrier's only light was from candles, which could cause explosions. They were forced to buy them at marked-up prices from the mine owners. They had to walk up to a mile to the coal face. On the way, I accidentally found out about one of the Hurrier's young colleagues. We're at the end, Kerry?
No, we're not at the end yet, Tony.
Well, what's this thing here, then?
This is a ventilation door.
It's a door?
It's a door.
You can hardly see it in the dark. Why do you have doors in mines?
Well, mines have to have doors. It directs the ventilation around all the workings.
So does it stay shut all the time?
Yes, except when there's coal coming out, and then obviously it's got to be opened and then closed behind again.
So who opens and closes it?
A young child. They were called trappers, or door boys in South Wales.
Well, I have to say, that does sound just about the easiest job in the whole world.
Yes, of course it is. You sit there.
Right. Hold my rope.
You hold your rope.
Yeah.
You hear a noise. You open the door.
Well, it's a doddle.
Now then, do it in the dark.
Yeah.
With rats scurrying around.
It is totally different. As soon as the lights go out, you feel the cold. You feel so isolated. If you can turn the light back on now, Kerry. It's weird, the difference it makes. Imagine a little child being stuck sitting down there, how many hours a day?
Up to 12 hours.
And presumably they'd be the first person in.
They'd be in first thing in the morning, and then they'd have to stay there until the last collier left in the night. There's a nice story which comes from the Royal Commission's report on children in mines. And the commissions were actually visiting a colliery, and they came across a young trapper called Mary Davis in the Merthyr Tydfil area, and she was actually sleeping by the air door. When they woke her up, she said that the rats had run off with her bread and cheese, and she was so upset, being in the dark on her own, she closed her eyes and went to sleep to forget about it all.
But darkness, rats and long hours were just the start for the Hurrier. They had to drag tubs of coal from the coal face to the lift shaft. They wore leather belts and were attached by chains to the tubs, which were often just sleds that slid over the rocky floor. And this is where the Hurriers would have worked?
Yes, this is one of the mine tunnels, and this is a coal cart.
These little kids had to drag these things along?
Yeah, they pulled weights of up to half a ton.
But apart from the weight, it's the dust. Their clothes must have got filthy.
And they got dripped and everything else. So they had a solution for that in the north of England.
Which was?
Not to wear any clothes.
You're kidding?
I'm not kidding. The women usually kept their clothes on from the waist down.
Yeah.
But the men would work stark naked.
Well, allowed to keep my trousers on?
Of course you are.
So what do we know about these children and the work that they did?
Well, one of the best descriptions we've got is of Edward Edwards, aged 7 years old, of Britain Ferry. He described his day's work. He dragged one of these back and forth 60 yards at a time from the coalface to the main roads. As he said, sometimes he pushed it, sometimes he pulled it, sometimes it fell on him. I broke a bone here and there. Not a very pleasant occupation at all.
I'll tell you what, there's enough parky in here. You're not going to beat me up if I don't do it fast enough, are you?
No, not at all.
Right. I'll have to get down to my hands and knees, won't I? Because it's so low here. Right. Cool. Blimey, I can hardly move the thing at all. Lord knows how a 4 or 5-year-old did it.
And that tunnel is about the size of the tunnel they would have been working in.
Kerry, I think there's a gradient here, isn't there?
Yes. the tunnels actually followed the coal seams themselves.
I don't know how these kids managed to get these things uphill.
Well, in some places, of course, some modern collieries, they actually had rails down and little wheels on the cart, and it made it a little bit easier. But on the other hand, the cart could run away with wheels on and run over the children.
I think I'd rather take the risk of being crushed and have the things on rails.
You pay your money and you take a choice.
I tell you what, every time you pull and yank forward, it really digs into your knees. How long would they have been doing? How long would they have been doing this for at a time, Kerry?
Well, up to 12 hours a day. Back and forth, back and forth. Full ones out, empty ones back in.
The other thing, of course, is that every time you move forward, you're kicking up the dust. And then, as soon as you've finished the forward motion bit, you breathe in like mad in order to gulp some more air, and the dust goes straight down your throat again. The rubble laid down after the mine closed makes pulling the tub even harder. But then I am a few years older than the average hurrier. That is a horrible job. It's really disgusting. There's all the dust coming up, choking you. I've got blood on my knee from somewhere. I've got a cut on my hand there. But without all those little children pulling these trucks miles and miles through those dark passageways, the captains of industry would have been literally powerless.